The Coffee Wars, Starbucks versus Dunkin'.
Okay, let's jump right into this explainer. We are looking at a heavyweight strategic matchup between two absolute titans of the coffee world. We're going to unpack how corporate structure basically dictates everything: global strategy, risk, and just plain survival in retail today. If you want to know how multi-billion-dollar empires are built, you got to look at their structural DNA. So, let's kick things off with a massive misconception. If I asked you right now, hey, is Starbucks a franchise? You'd probably say yes, right? Well, actually, the answer is a resounding no. At least, not in the traditional sense here in the US. While Dunkin' runs on that classic franchise model we all know, Starbucks uses a licensed store system. And look, that is not just some boring legal technicality. It's a fundamentally different way of doing business that changes the whole game for how they scale and control their brand.
To get why this choice is so absolutely crucial, just think about the sheer scale here. 38,000. Starbucks operates over 38,000 stores globally, and about 16,300 of those are just in the United States alone. To put that into perspective, that is basically a Starbucks for every neighborhood, busy street corner, and airport terminal you can possibly imagine. Trying to keep the customer experience, the brand identity, and the product quality exactly the same across that many locations, that is a monumental operational headache. We're talking about a company valued at over $45 billion. Protecting that massive brand equity is literally their #1 priority. And to them, the only way to pull that off is through total, unyielding structural control.
What's really wild about this is just how fiercely these two dominate the US coffee landscape. Starbucks is leading the pack with a massive 36.7% market share. Dunkin', meanwhile, sits comfortably right behind them at 24.6%. So they're sharing the same territory, fighting every single day for the morning routines of millions of commuters, but they are fighting this war using entirely different structural playbooks. That brings us to Section 1, Starbucks and the control model. Let's dive into Starbucks first. They rely on what we can basically call heavy armor, a premium control model. They don't just want to sell you coffee, they want absolute control over the physical environment, the service, the whole shebang. If you want to open a Starbucks, you can't just go out and buy a franchise. You have to acquire a license. And the financial barriers, they are steep. You've got to prove you have at least $700,000 in liquid assets. You have to pay an initial license cost of roughly $315,000. You need previous food or retail experience. But most importantly, you have to agree to incredibly strict corporate standards. Starbucks is going to oversee the store design, the exact products offered, everything. They hold on to this iron grip just to make sure a latte in New York tastes exactly like a latte in Seattle, and that the lighting and music feel identical no matter where you walk in.
This operational balance is really where Starbucks flexes its strategic muscles. By mixing company-operated stores with these highly controlled licensed outlets, they get to maintain maximum direct control over the experience. And that level of curation is exactly what justifies charging a premium price for their coffee. Plus, they get the huge added perk of accessing hyper-local market data and prime real estate from those third-party licensees. Think of the spots inside major grocery stores or right in the middle of college campuses. It all adds up to incredibly high operating profit margins across the board.
Now for Section 2, Dunkin' and the franchise machine.
So let's cross enemy lines and check out Dunkin'. If Starbucks is heavy armor, Dunkin' is the light armor. Their whole model is about agility, rapid scaling, and local adaptability. Dunkin' operates under a traditional franchise model for nearly 100% of its stores. It's a strategy that's over 70 years old, and it frees up corporate to focus strictly on the big picture: innovation, menu tweaks, national marketing, while leaving the day-to-day grind entirely to independent franchisees. This means Dunkin' can expand its footprint like wildfire without needing a massive pile of corporate cash. But honestly, the biggest advantage here is adaptability. Dunkin's research teams actually work directly with local franchisees to adapt to what people in that specific area want. In some markets, iced drinks are flying out the door. In others, donuts and breakfast sandwiches are the real heavy hitters. Franchisees know their neighborhoods best, and this system empowers them to serve those specific cravings. So let's put these two philosophies head to head. With the Starbucks model, the parent company takes on the vast majority of the financial risk. They demand total control, and in exchange, they charge a premium price for that highly curated, ultra-consistent experience. Contrast that with Dunkin', where the operational risk is shared heavily with the franchisees. That allows for incredible local flexibility and highly competitive pricing aimed right at everyday middle-class consumers. Both strategies are clearly successful. They both generate billions, but they are built for entirely different retail battlefields.
Which leads us to Section 3, Navigating the Market Forces.
Let's zoom out a bit, because obviously no business operates in a vacuum. Both of these coffee titans are facing a barrage of external market forces right now that threaten their margins and future growth.
Technologically, there's this massive pivot toward mobile orders, delivery apps, and even automated barista robots, totally changing how customers interact with the brands. Economically, consumer spending is tight, meaning folks have less disposable income for a daily premium coffee habit. Politically, the landscape's complicated. You've got rising union involvement leading to tricky workplace negotiations, plus new international tariffs on goods from key growing regions like Colombia that can really squeeze the profit margins on raw coffee beans. And finally, competitively, buyer power is off the charts. It costs the customer absolutely $0 to just walk across the street and buy their morning cup from someone else. Both Starbucks and Dunkin' have to navigate these identical pressures. But because of those structural differences we talked about, they are forced to react to them in profoundly different ways.
Moving to Section 4, the e-commerce threat. This brings us to what might be the single most critical challenge facing retail distribution networks today. The explosive growth of digital channels isn't just giving us a new way to buy coffee, it is actively disrupting the relationship between the corporate parent and the physical store. We need to talk about a concept called encroachment. Imagine for a second you're a multi-unit Dunkin' franchisee. You've invested heavily, taking on serious debt to build out these physical locations and hire local staff. Then, corporate rolls out a slick, new centralized app. Suddenly, customers are buying their coffee almost entirely through the app for quick pickup. Corporate sees this as a huge win, but as the franchisee, you might feel like the parent company is bypassing you, keeping those e-commerce profits and reducing your expensive, hard-earned physical store to nothing more than a logistics hub for handing over mobile orders.
So, the takeaway here is that e-commerce is creating a massive structural dissonance within the traditional franchise model. If people are using a click-to-collect app and the franchisee isn't getting a fair cut of that digital profit, their willingness to renew contracts, renovate their dining rooms, or build new stores absolutely plummets. Why wouldn't it? They're essentially forced to compete against the very brand they paid to license.
The source material for this explainer hits the nail on the head, noting that without some form of profit sharing between franchisors and franchisees' willingness to invest and renew contracts may decline. And wow, is this where Starbucks' heavy armor, direct ownership model suddenly looks a whole lot safer? Because Starbucks actually owns its corporate stores, goal alignment is completely guaranteed. When they launch an app or start selling Nespro pods in the grocery aisle, they aren't causing internal friction with independent franchisees. All that revenue just flows straight back to the same parent company. Dunkin's agile, franchise-heavy model, on the other hand, faces a really serious internal vulnerability if they can't figure out how to fairly share those digital profits with the local operators who literally built the brand's physical footprint over the last 70 years.
And that leaves us with one final, absolutely critical question to chew on. Starbucks' model requires massive capital and runs the risk of making them a lot less agile when competing against aggressive pricing. Dunkin's model is incredibly fast and adaptable, but they risk alienating their own franchisees as more and more sales move online. So, in an era where an app on your smartphone can practically replace a multi-million-dollar storefront, which of these retail models is truly future-proof? Ultimately, the winner of this retail war won't just be whoever roasts the best bean or comes up with the trendiest seasonal drink. The true victor is going to be the brand that builds the most resilient, adaptable business system for the digital age. It's a monumental challenge, and it's one that every major retail brand is going to have to answer.